Okay, everybody, let's get as close to you can as the front, so that we have a chance to. What a great turnout! This is awesome, man. That's really great. I told the IMB missionary over there. I said, I think we'll have they're just so used to people not being interested in the UK. I said, I think we'll probably have 50 or more. They're like, oh, really? And so so this is great, man. This is really good. And I've probably had. I would say about 15 people that have texted me or emailed me saying, please record it because, we just can't make it or they're out of town. And so even a few people on our missions committee were traveling this weekend. And so our staff has been through often. What you're seeing tonight, I've already worked with our staff on. So if I'm going to go through a lot of information and I tell you what, how about we do this? And I don't mind it. Just if I say something that really confuses you, just raise your hand. I'll stop, and because I probably confuse somebody else, or So stop, Shane. It's not even funny. Okay. So, see, this is how it's going to be. All right. So anyway, nonetheless, I was in a good thought too. But I really appreciate you guys coming out. I do think it's going to be a good night, and I am going to record it, so anything that you may have to, if you want to go back through it, you'll certainly have that opportunity to do so. But let me pray for us, and then we'll get going, okay? God, thank you for my friends. I just thank you for what this church means to me and Michelle and the boys, and it's just the neatest. And I thank you for what you're doing at ClearView. I thank you for the excitement at ClearView. I thank you that you put a work before us that's going to be a hard one. It is, but we know that you are faithful, and you give us power, and give us vision, give us creativity, and give us stamina, because it'll take that. And Lord, I pray tonight that you'll speak. A lot of people are in here for a lot of different reasons when it comes to using their life and leveraging their talents and their money and their benefits and all of their resources and their strengths and their gift mix and all of there's just a lot of different ways that we can help and our church on many levels. And so I pray that you'll speak to each of us individually and call us forward. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. Well, the path to Yorkshire. So I want to start really, really quick on the front end before I get into actually anything related to the UK. I want to spend a couple of minutes, since I've got you in a room, talking about missions at ClearView. Okay, we are a few weeks away, maybe. Hopefully in this next short season, we'll be able to announce to you someone that we've identified and we're talking to about missions as a position. So I'm really excited about that. But I want to start with just a couple of quick things on where ClearView is in the missions perspective, and then I want to move that to Yorkshire. So I don't have I'm down in front anyway. Let's go to the next one. I'll just have to do it like that. So when you look at the difference between a shotgun and a bullet, y'all would know I would go to an illustration like that, right? A guy that likes to hunt. One of the things I've learned over the years when it comes to missions is it's very easy for a church to say yes to just any need, because needs are everywhere, right? And so what ends up happening, and this, by the way, this isn't code for ClearView. I'm not saying that. I'm saying we got to watch out for that we don't end up being a mile wide and an inch deep. Because if you've only got, let's say, $10,000, well, if you spread that across 15 different organizations, then you don't really go deep anywhere. And I would rather see us, the world's full of needs. I would rather see us pick a lane and go deep into that. And even sitting on some of the boards I've sat on before with other missions agencies, sometimes that can be a problem, that you just get too spread out. So I would rather us take a more of a bullet approach and take a deep dive wherever we go, We've taken a deep dive with Room in the Inn, and look, it's paid off. We've taken a deep dive with Haiti. We've taken a deep dive with New Orleans. We're continually trying to plow that. So we've taken a deep dive with Oneida, depending on, where you put the syllable on the word. So I still don't know how to pronounce that yet. How is it, Dr. Parks? How do you? Oneida. Thank you, Dr. Parks. So that's kind of an idea there. And so let's go to the next one. Now, if you look at what Jesus said in Acts 1:8, this is a verse that is going to be mission central for us. This is how a church, the good thing about us with Jesus is we don't have to invent the model. Aren't you glad? I mean, we don't have to invent the model. Jesus already did that. So look at what Jesus said. He said, you'll receive power when the Holy Spirit's come upon you, and you'll be my witnesses, Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, remotest parts of the earth. So let me break that down to you how that looks in Franklin. Okay, so let's go so that would be, you'll be my witnesses in Franklin, in Tennessee, USA, and global. Okay, so that is where we will put our focus. Now, one of the things at ClearView in general is I really do want us, the reason you're hearing so much about place and finding your gifts and finding your calling is because there's a reason Jesus started in Jerusalem. That's because that's where you are 99% of your life and 99% of your week. Very few of you are global travelers. Most of you live right here and you work right here. Your kids go to school here. Your friends are here. And one of the things that ClearView is going to have to do is we're going to have to flip our mind and get back in the streets. We have got to have more street emphasis overall at ClearView. And that's why BKC is such a big part of my heart, is that it puts us in the streets. And so that's why you're hearing a lot of the talk about finding your calling, because we live here. We don't live in Yorkshire, right? But we go there, but we don't live there. So let's go to the next one. Now I want to spend a second. If there's any place you're going to get confused, it's right now. All right. So, but this makes total sense to me. But hopefully this will make sense to you in a few minutes. But let me tell you why I really believe this is going to be I would say just critical to your understanding of how God made you and how ClearView can be used in the mission world. In the business community, there's a concept called vertical markets, okay? And then I don't expect any of you that aren't, some of y'all geek out on business, some of you could care less, all right? But in the business community, a vertical market is a specific strategy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how a vertical market approach really, I think, will leverage ClearView to a 10 out of 10 on the scale. I'm going to use an illustration that makes the most sense to me because it's the business community that I understand the most, and that'd be Lee Company, all right? So let's go to the next one. When I was the chaplain at Lee Company, let me give you an example. So now don't read ahead. I'm going to explain this to you. On the far left of the screen, that's healthcare, all right? Healthcare is a vertical market, and here's what that means. It's a market that's not going anywhere. It's going to be there. There's always going to be hospitals. There's always going to be doctor's offices. There's always going to be facilities, that nursing homes, urgent care. That's a market, right? It's never going away. So an example at Lee Company would be they would look at all of their tools. So imagine a toolbox, and you don't have 1,000 tools. You just got a handful of tools. So you start picking business markets that best fit your toolbox. So in other words, if you're a hockey player, don't focus all your energy on soccer balls, right? It doesn't make sense. Well, Lee Company did plumbing, electrical, HVAC, security, maintenance, facility management, all of those things. And so what they would do is they would pour those tools into that market, because that market was a growing market. Another one was home services. Another one was government. So I'll give you an example. When Obama, regardless of your political bent, when Obama took office, he infused a bunch of money into government, in that government bailout, right? Well, what did that tell business leaders around the country? Okay, government just got a big surge in money, right? So governments have buildings. Governments have needs for buildings. So they would infuse cash and infuse tools into that. So that's an illustration. Hopefully, I think that would make sense. Let's go to the next phase. So tonight, I want to put that in your brain, and I want to leave it there for a reason, because I really believe that if we look at Franklin and if we look at ClearView, we can start thinking of what are our strengths on the ClearView side, And what does our city need? So if we know that, I'll give you an example. If we know that we are just good when it comes to things like BKC, that's a long-term ministry that's run here, right? We know we're good at that. We can take that because we know kids are important in this town, and we can leverage that into the community, okay? So I'm going to come back to that in just a minute, but I want to put that in your mind because that's going to be really important in a few minutes, all right? Let's go to the next. So here's the question that you're probably asking, why the UK? So I'll give you a little bit of an overview of what I've discovered, what I found, and what I saw when I was over there. And for the one visit, I've probably had 20 phone calls with missionaries of different types, different people, different organizations. I've done quite a little about a background research. So I'm going to tell you what I saw and also what prompted me to even go in the first place. So let's keep moving. So that's the UK, Wales, England. That red dot's London, Ireland. And then I left out, for any of you that are partial to Northern Ireland, I'm sorry, I left out the word. I did discover over there, which I should have known this, but Northern Ireland is its own deal. It's a separate country altogether. Some of you may have known that. Most of you this whole time have been thinking, I went to London anyway, so this is all educational for you. Because it is interesting. When you talk about England, everybody thinks London. They really do. Even the missionaries will tell you that. When you talk about England, all the attention goes to London. So where I was, and then there's Scotland, where I was more in that pink area, which is Yorkshire, which is where Ken Bell, everybody stand up, Ken Bell. Turn and wave to everybody. There you go. This is our resident Yorkshireman. All right, so, and then Miss Sue, we can't, now the better half, and that's Miss Sue, who she raised, stand up, Miss Sue. This is your country. You got to stand up. That's Sue. So, right. I'll tell you a funny story. A few months ago, I was talking to her about something about Mr. Ken, and she said, you know, because he plays golf with Joe Denny and John Gardner, and he plays with Mr. Kress, and she says, they've ruined Ken. He eats fried foods. His grandma is awful, and it was awful. So I love it. Yeah, true Englishman. So anyway, so that's the UK. Let's go to the next one there. This is staggering. The UK is roughly the size of Michigan, and that's the population. Think about that. Imagine 66 million people crammed into Michigan. Isn't that crazy? I mean, it is tight. Wait till you see the next image about even that doesn't do it justice. Go to the next one. That's a population grid. So look at how concentrated it is. Look at London down there in the south. So go to the next one. I'll show you. I put some cities on there to give you a little bit of an understanding of what was where. So that's London, Birmingham, Manchester, Leeds, and I came from Manchester, and so that's kind of in that area. It was funny when I was over there. I walked into a coffee shop at the church. They have this really nice coffee shop at Calvary Chapel, York, and I just said that y'all got the coffee made, and I stopped the whole room. I'm not kidding. Like everybody turned. And this one lady said, "Where are you from?" And I said, "Scotland." And I did. So it was great. But so anyway, so that's the population area there, and you can see how dense it is around the major cities. So let's go to the next one. I'm just going to show you a couple of quick photos. When I was in York, that was across from my bed and breakfasts are everywhere over there. I mean, they're just everywhere. In fact, you're more likely to stay in a bed and breakfast than you probably are anything. And so mine was the Barbican, and it was right there in front of the Barbican. And that upper story right there, it goes back to the 1100s when they built a wall around York. But I want to tell you something really cool. I thought I had the coolest office in the world being in like this 1875-year-old home. The pastor at Calvary Chapel, York, his office is in that Top Gun turret up there. I was like, oh, come on. I sent that picture to one of my buddies, Darren Tyler, and I said, hey, I'm pretty sure I hate this guy. His office is in there, and he said, I definitely hate him. And so and there's a coffee shop. See those two windows? There's a coffee shop in there, and it's the coolest, man. And every day before the pastor's conference, if you wanted to get up early, which I did, you'd get in there about 7:30, and we would pray. About 50 of us crammed into this little coffee room, and we would sing and pray, and it was sitting there. There's still, for those of you who like wood, on the wood, there's still marks where in the 1100s where the carpenters would mark their lines to put. I mean, it's everything over there is just so old. It's so cool. Let's go to the next one. That's York Minster, and that's probably 1/10 of it. It's you've been there at Bell's, haven't you? Yeah, and it's just very. Anybody else been to York Minster in here? Dr. Land and okay. Oh wow, several of y'all. Okay, awesome. So keep going. That's inside of it again. Very modest representation there. So I did. That's where a lot of stuff people go there to see that. Keep going. That's Scarborough, which I think was where you were born, Mr. Ken. Is that right? So Scarborough is a harbor town. I went there on the last day. That's a kind of a wide-angle shot. And keep going. That's Scarborough Castle. So there are things like that are over there, but that's not. You don't see as much of that as you do other sites. But I did get to take about one day to go look around a little bit. Keep going. That's Helmsley, and that's once you get outside these urban centers, instead of Holstein cattle, that's what you see. Instead of polled Herefords, there you go. And the sheep are everywhere, and those hedgerows. I mean, it's about as Harry Potter as you could imagine. So keep going. Now I show you that picture because that picture right there to me represents a lot of what you need to know when it comes to neighborhoods. Take a look at that and just kind of study that picture for a minute. You've got very small cars. I think I saw 2 trucks the entire time I was over there, like a regular pickup truck. I think I saw 2. Notice how there's no yards, no such thing. Unless you're very wealthy and live out in the countryside, you're going to live house to house to house to house with a little gate. You might have what they might call a little garden or a little courtyard kind of thing. It's really strange for me in here talking about the UK with 2 people that grew up there. I'm just going to go ahead and put that out there, like I know what I'm talking about. But all I can tell you is what Tennessee Jason saw when he was over there. But this poses a very real issue because there's nowhere to park in a lot of these places. So churches, a parking lot is called a car park. And so if you have a place to park your car, that's a big deal. But people typically over there will not drive 30 minutes to get to a church. There's just no way. They're going to walk if they even decide to go at all. Ryan Lindsay, I think, told me that the UK right now is less than 1% evangelical. So let that sink in for a minute. So keep going. So here's what I would say, what I learned about the spiritual condition. I would say those words, they're staggeringly lost. In fact, Ryan Lindsay wrote a document, and this is how he phrased it, and I thought it was pretty poignant. He said, Jesus talked about leaving the 99 to go get the one. Over here, you leave the one to get the 99. And it's just that drastic. So it's very secular. Just very secular. There's a massive suicide rate. Go to the next image. I saw that in a bathroom. 84 men a week take their own lives in the UK. We're making a stand against suicide. Look at the bottom. They got this new acronym, CALM, Campaign Against Living Miserably. And to tell you how real suicide is over there, I had a really weird encounter while I was there. I got on the train to go to Leeds, from York to Leeds, and you travel by train most everywhere you go, or Uber. Uber was great. And so I got on the train, and the announcement comes on, hey, y'all, nobody's leaving for Leeds. We don't know how long it's going to be. And then that lasted 10 minutes, and then it lasted 20 minutes, and so I just deboarded and went and got an Uber. Well, I asked one of the train station there in York Station, and I sent a text to Ariana Walker at Mercy, or actually Rob Harvey, her brother-in-law, and I said, hey, something's going on with the trains. He said, it's probably a suicide. Well, sure enough, somebody had strapped themselves to the track. And they were thinking it was going to be a terrorist bomb because they stopped trains in Manchester, Leeds, York. The entire area of that whole part of the country. They said, Ariana said, I've never seen that happen. But they asked everybody, I found out later, please deboard the train and do not speak and do not talk. Be very quiet. And so there was something going on. Well, when I got off the train, I saw this older British man, and he said, he I don't know, I guess I had a happy look on my face or something, but he said, you're faring quite well. And I said, okay, yes, sir. And he said, his day got messed up too. And he said, this happens a lot over here. He said, in London, they have a team of people. He said in most major cities, they have a team that when there's a suicide, they can have it cleaned up and back online in 10 minutes. He said, so that's how that says a lot. So that's pretty real. Let's go to the next one. So saturated with people, talked about that. Very friendly people. Man, everybody was incredibly friendly. I was really kind of amazed at just how people were very willing to talk to you, and then I would also say increasingly socialist, and that if you look at their country, it's just becoming more and more socialist all the time. More and more government services, and that's just happening a lot. Now I could probably give you 100 more things. Those are just things that I noticed about the condition of the UK. Let's go to the next one. So this is what I would say. When it comes to the idea of God, they've just moved on. I would say that about the UK. Listening to the missionaries, listening to the pastors I've talked to, listening to just different people, it just doesn't factor into their thinking to think about spiritual things. At least it doesn't appear to. And the pastors I talk to, they're pastoring churches of 20 and 30 people, if that. Sometimes, and sometimes 15, 20 years at that. They may see a convert every now and then. It's inch by inch to gain ground over there. And so it's just a very secular country. It is what it is. So let's go to the next one. So back to why the UK and why ClearView. So let's keep going. I would say it's a forgotten land. Now you're just hearing Jason for a second, okay? One of the things that kind of hit my mind was every time you ever hear about the UK, if you hear about it at all, you hear about London. But I also have been around enough to know there's a lot more beyond London. And when I think about the Southern Baptist Convention and the International Mission Board, you just don't hear that much about the UK, and I totally understand why. Because they consider places like the UK reached. Not by any stretch reached every person, meaning they have access to the gospel if they want it, right, so to speak. But when you think about tribes in the Amazon, places in Uganda, when you think about remote parts of the earth, they don't have access to the gospel like the people in the UK. So it's just overlooked, if you will. Yet it's amazingly lost and in desperate need of Jesus. That's one area. Another one I would say is I really believe it'll be the USA in 20 years. I really do. And I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. In fact, I asked a lot of the pastors that I got to meet over there. They said, why are you here? And I would tell them a few different things. And I say, but I also think when you look at the United States and health care and all the push for socialized health care, when you look at gun control, when you look at all the different mentalities of the way the world's shaping up, it appears to me that the United States is becoming way more secular and way more government-driven, and I think that's probably where we're going to end up. And I asked several of those pastors over there, do you think I'm right? And they said, absolutely. And most of them were from the U.S. They had been there 15, 20 years. So they were just planting churches. So I do believe, and so from that standpoint, I believe that it will be a great proving ground. Because here's the thing. I heard from several missionaries, if you're a Christian in the UK, it's because you want to be and you're alone a lot of times. In fact, Ariana Walker met with our staff this week. I think if I heard her right, she said her boys are the only Christians in their school. Whole school. So you have to, in fact, Chad Rigney, who's in London, he came from Dallas, and he's been over there 6 years. And he said, I can tell you this, Jason, if you're a Christian in the UK and you're open about that, it's a lonely walk because it's hard to find people like you. So I think that's where we're headed. Let's go to another one. And so back to ClearView's leverage. I really believe there's several ways we can pour some of what we have into what they have. Spiritually speaking, why did I start looking at that? I guess the easiest way to say it is it just wouldn't leave me alone. I remember the first time I went to Moldova, I had to Google where it was because I had heard about it, but I encountered a story of a little girl, and when I did, it just wrecked me. And for about a month, I'd find myself driving down the road thinking about this country that I had to Google, find out where it's at. Well, after about a month, it just dawned on me like, hey, that's on your heart for what. So I went, and then I discovered why. And I would say the UK was that way with me. I didn't tell our staff about it. I just kept thinking, why do I keep thinking about this place? And then I talked to Ken and Sue a little bit, and then I would talk to different people. And then I don't know if you know this, but Michelle Turner, who runs CCC, they were missionaries over there for a few years, her and Chris. And so I went to talk to her, and it just seemed we began to have some common interest. And then I began to pray and ask God, if you want me to go scout around over there, there's like 0 doors that are open for me, so open up some doors. And that happened really fast. One of those doors was that pastor's conference. I called a pastor in Arizona who used to be the pastor for Michelle Turner and her husband Chris. And he said, why are you interested in the UK? I said, I don't know why. I mean, like, literally, I haven't a clue. I just think about it a lot. And he said, well, this is what you should do. He said, there's a pastor's conference of about 50 pastors that meet in May. Why don't you go over there and you'll meet a few of those guys and you'll get the lay of the land. And if nothing else, I mean, you'll get that out of it. So I did. And then another factor of that was that Rachel Beatonball, Rachel's in here, Mercy, where she works Mostly Multiplied, they have Mercy UK. And I was introduced to them. So all those things kind of kept coming together, and it was enough to make me at least go and investigate it. So I did. And that's some of the areas. And on this side of it now, yeah, I really do believe there's some ways that we can pour into that. So let's go to the next slide. So this was now I'm kind of, if you want to follow the way my mind is working, now I'm carrying you into my goal. When I went over there, this is what I was going to go do. I set up 2 major meetings. The pastor's conference was the first 3 days, and then I set up 2 meetings with our IMB, International Mission Board. And for those of you, especially for those of you that maybe didn't grow up in Baptist life, if you didn't come from that faith line, the great thing about Southern Baptists is our strength in missions has been that we've always cooperated. We have a thing called the cooperative program. And the cooperative program allows a tiny little church in the uttermost parts of Nebraska to contribute to the same missions fund that we do. So our strength has always been in our cooperation, and that's through an international mission board. So if you're a Southern Baptist, you are a part of the largest missions sending agency in the world, second to none. I mean, and that's not a pride thing. Please don't hear that. I'm saying the girth of it. It's a big missions agency. And one of the things that separates our mission sending as Baptists is we do not have it to where our missionaries have to raise their own support. We take care of our missionaries, if it's a vehicle or a home. So a lot of faith-based organizations, the missionary spends up to 60 to 70% of their year raising funds to stay in business for the next year. And we said, well, that's tough because you're always having to try to stay afloat, right? So what we do is when you give money to missions, and at ClearView, when we give money to missions, we're giving to the International Mission Board and the cooperative program. So Ryan Lindsay, who you're going to see in a second, he's the missionary over there. Yeah, he's the missionary over in Leeds. So hey, go back to the one just before it for a second. So I went to have a meeting with Ryan, and we drove around several areas one day, a whole day, and then I spent about a whole day with Mercy at their home base over there in Oxenhope. So let's go. So this is the Lindsays, Ryan and Tara. They're from Kansas, and that's Titus and Cora, and they've been over there 6 years. They both went to Midwestern Baptist Theological Seminary, and they are, I would say, well on their way to being more British than they are American. They speak great Yorkshire. He actually has a guy discipling him in Yorkshire. Just because we speak English doesn't mean we speak English. I can promise you that. He can turn it on and turn it off, and it's pretty fascinating to hear him speak their language over there. Now, here's the fascinating thing with Titus and Cora. Titus and Cora, that's pretty much all they know. So he said when they came over here for furlough I don't know if they still call it that, but whatever. So when they came over here for about a few months, and he said by the end of the time, they wanted to go home. I mean, that's where they live, and so they live in Kirkstall, which is a kind of a suburb of Leeds, if you will. And Ryan has been amazing. Ryan is a tender-hearted guy. He's very methodical. So his job as an IMB missionary is not to pastor churches. It's not what he does. He plants churches. So what he does is he tries to raise up locals, meet some of them, and disciple them, and then plant in a certain portion of the city. And he told me a couple of things that's really heartwarming for me. One that I found, before I get to that, he said that the IMB is asking them to focus on the larger cities because you just saw that heat grid where the populations are. Well, there you go. That's kind of their method behind it. But one of the things that I was really struck by that I think I couldn't speak to this nearly as much as people that are in the IMB over the last 20, 30 years, but having been a Baptist minister my whole ministry life, I would venture to say it's not too much of a stretch to say 25 years ago, this wouldn't have been the case. I don't know. I could be wrong. I really could. But Ryan is partnering with trying to build New Testament churches. And let me tell you the difference of that. So he's over there to plant churches, so he's got more of a green light to find, as long as the theology and the belief systems are akin, then they work with anybody that'll work with them because the situation's that desperate over there. So he's working with the New Frontiers movement. He's working with multiple New Testament movements to move that forward. And I found that refreshing because the situation is so dire with people lost without Christ that it's just really difficult for him. I'll give you an example, and I didn't get a picture of this, and I'm not sure that it would have really shown up very well. But in their stairwell at their home, they have a big laminated map of the city of Leeds. So Ryan has gone through in the last 6 years, and he's tried to identify every church he can. Just put them on the map, right? And he takes a Sharpie, puts a blue X or a red X. And so he and Tara used the phrase, there's a church there, but it's not life-giving, meaning it doesn't matter the denomination. It's nothing happening at all. I saw a lot of cathedrals with for sale signs. I mean, it's just that way. So if you look, if you're looking at a map of Nashville, let's just take a map of Nashville. from the center of Nashville toward Joelton, Ashland City, Bellevue. That whole window, okay? Just imagine that window. A few X's up and through there, and a few blue X's of life-giving churches. If you went from Nashville toward Murfreesboro, Gallatin, Antioch, that whole window right there, nothing. Like zilcho. Hasn't, as far as he can determine, not if there. I don't recall seeing any X through there. And he said, or it could just be that I haven't found it, but he's been there 6 years. And how big is Leeds, you guys? Probably a million? How many? Probably 2 million. So not too far from Nashville, I would say, not too awful different. So he drives around, meets as many pastors as he can, and so that window, that's just a open corridor. So that's the Lindsays. Let's go to the next one. That's the group from Mercy, Ariana Walker on the right, Debbie Harvey, which is her sister, in the middle, and Rob Harvey there on the left. So let me tell you what they do. So the other meeting I had was with these guys. So Ariana Walker is the CEO and founder of Mercy UK. Her sister, Debbie, there in the middle. So Ariana would be your visionary. Debbie Harvey would be the COO. She's the operations mind behind it, all right? So Ariana's 10 years older than Debbie, and without giving you 20 minutes of their story, I'll tell you the quick high points. They both were raised daughters of a pastor, and when Debbie was a teenager, the middle one there, when Debbie was a teenager, they noticed what they thought was a lot of rebellion. Turns out she had been abused as a kid and as a teenager. So when her parents find out, she comes to live with Ariana for a few years. Ariana, one way through another, finds out about Mercy in Brentwood here. So Debbie becomes the first UK resident ever to come to Mercy US. It's a fascinating story. And so she gets over there, and she said, when my sister comes back, her body had changed. Her mind had changed. She had been in all kinds of stuff. I mean, it's a good video. You can watch it if you go to Mercy UK. You can Google Mercy UK. You can watch that on your own. So Debbie marries Rob. Rob would be, think of Rob as like church development. So if a church like ClearView UK, let's say we're over in York, and we call Mercy, we're going to probably talk with Rob. He's worked with church partnerships, is kind of what he does, all right? So I had a meeting with those guys, and it went incredibly well, and they are absolutely wonderful people. And I'll tell you a little bit more about how we can help them in a second. So I met Ariana through Rachel Beatonball, who many of you guys know. Rachel sits on our finance team here at ClearView. And so let's go to the next. All right, now, told you I was going to come back to this. Now let's talk about ClearView for a second. And I'll walk you through this, about where I think we can work. Let's go to the next one. So if you look at leveraging some of our strengths and to the IMB and to Mercy, I want to walk you through that for a second. Let's go to the next one. So let's start with Mercy UK. As it stands right now, after working with our staff, we've had the Clearview Baptist Church staff and me, most of us, we've had this conversation I'm having with you right now. But it was more X's and O's, get on the whiteboard, and draw it out, and let's think out loud. We've identified a few places that we believe we can start some help. The first is what I would call a university exchange. So what Mercy UK does, I didn't cover that with you. Let me tell you what they do. They do two things primarily. They started out as a home for girls just like Debbie, girls that were distressed, pregnant, abandoned, abused, you name it, prostitution. And Rachel, I think, don't they go like 18 to 27? They don't start below 18 like you guys do they? So it's above 18. 18 to like 27, 28. And so they work heavily with churches because they see churches as the front lines. In other words, if we've got a girl inside ClearView that is pregnant, or one of y'all have a granddaughter or a niece, or you've got a friend that's got a teenage girl and she's living on the streets, or she's got an eating disorder, then we're going to be the first ones to hear about that, right? So then we would partner her up with Mercy UK. So they have a home that they have, I think, 15 to 20 residents. I can't remember. Anybody remember in our staff? 15 residents, and the program can last as much as a year to even a little more, maybe even up to 2 years, I guess, give or take. So they live on site. So I want you to think of a swinging pendulum. Mercy UK started out being known for that, and then there came this ministry tool called Keys to Freedom. Keys to Freedom was a Bible study, 8 weeks, Rachel? 8 weeks. And Keys to Freedom was about your identity in Christ, shame, fear, forgiveness, just a whole bunch of your personal identity in Jesus, okay? And I think that study came out of Ditch the Baggage. Is that right? Okay, so Nancy, when Nancy Alcorn, who founded Mercy here in the States, she wrote a book called Ditch the Baggage. And out of that came a Bible study. So I want you, all you good Baptists, I want you to think of experiencing God. All right? Imagine that. Experiencing God. Just different topics. Okay, so the topics were shame, fear, all that kind of stuff. So they put this ministry tool out, and all of a sudden churches began to call and didn't know that they had anything to do with distressed and broken girls. These churches were looking for anything that was breathing life into their church, and this Bible study was doing that. So now it starts doing this. So they're as much known for Keys to Freedom as they are for the study. And so Ariana will tell you, they went out on faith, printed 1,000 or 4,000. Anybody remember? So 1,000. So 1,000, printed 1,000 Bible studies, which they thought was going to be a 4-year stock, 4 years worth of inventory. That lasted a month. And they panicked. And so churches are calling and going, oh, you have a girls' home too. So now this is just Jason talking, and this is maybe a little bit dangerous, but I'm trying to put it into American Baptist thinking. They don't have a Tennessee Baptist Mission Board that you can go, if you want to start a work, you can go down to Berry Farms, find somebody like Rock who does evangelism, or you can find somebody that deals with children, or you can find... The Tennessee Baptist Mission Board in many ways mirrors the church, all right? So you have partners, and you have people, you have assets that you can go work with, right? Well, they don't have that. And so they have standalone parachurch organizations. And at least if they have it, I haven't seen it. I haven't encountered it yet. So churches are calling Mercy needing help. So Ariana needs manpower. She needs manpower to go out because they do a lot of conferences. Ariana is a well-known speaker in the UK. She's phenomenal, amazing lady. So when I mention University Exchange, here's what I mean by that. They would love to see us take our university students, 18 to 22, send them over there for 60 to 90 days for a short-term missionary project, which I think is awesome. I mean, I would sign up in a minute if I was 18 to go do that. So what those young ladies and men will be doing is when they go to trade shows, when they go to any type of, think of a Beth Moore conference where they have this thing called, what's that big one? Cherish. Thousands of women. In fact, the day that the terrorist thing happened on the train, that was the day that 8,000 women were trying to get into Leeds. No trains. So the whole world was messed up that day. So the Cherish Conference, Mercy has a big booth. They need young men and women to man that booth, talk to those pastors, talk to the people about Mercy, and route them into the system. while also do daily operations help. So you'd be a short-term missionary. If you have a student that age, you could be a short-term missionary and go to the UK. But here's what they also said they would do, which I thought was awesome. They said, Jason, if you would be willing to do this, we wouldn't just like take, we want to give. So we would actually walk your students, your university students, through Keys to Freedom. So when they come back, they've gone through identity in Christ, forgiveness, freedom, awareness, how God made you, your disc profile. I mean, all those things. I mean, I was like, wow, that's a big win, right? So that's one area that and they're ready to go today with that. Just send them. So, Graham mentioned something like, well, I mean, we probably have, I think we had 30 something. She said, just 10 would be just, not 30 yet. We don't know all 30 would go, but they're ready for that. Another way that we could help Mercy is renovation teams. So over Christmas and into January, the girls leave campus. So they go back to their homes. Do y'all do that here too? 2 weeks? So they go roughly around January 1st, give or take a little bit. And by the way, anything I'm telling you tonight is very loose ballpark, okay? Just know that, all right? So when the girls leave campus, that's when they do plumbing repair, building beds, building out cabinets, renovating the kitchens, that kind of stuff. So any of you that are inclined with those kind of talents, they're waiting on that. That would be wonderful. So you can see now another tool, people that we could use for that. Digital missions. I asked them, tell me what your needs are, and they said, one of our needs is we need a lot of help digitally. I said, well, that's great, because we're moving on that ball with Dylan Sherlock, and what they need, it's not just social media, it's all the awareness that they're putting out throughout the UK, through Keys to Freedom and through the home. So imagine a girl goes to Google and she types in anorexia, or she types in, I'm thinking about suicide. Well, how amazing would it be if the first thing that comes up in the Google search is, don't do it, here's the video, right? Or how amazing would it be if the first thing she reads is, here's 5 ways to get out of an eating disorder, and it comes from Mercy. But we wrote it, right? People at ClearView like that. So digital missions is something that they really do need a lot of help in, and we have people in our church that, from a web platform to social media to SEO, search engine optimization, all those kind of things, we could really pour into that. And then ministry conference. The reason I put that in there, I really believe that when I asked Ryan Lindsay, does the IMB give you the ability to do leadership development? He said, yes, but we don't have the money. I asked him, I said, what's your ministry budget? He said, you're looking at it. 0. So the IMB funds them, but he said, it's all on you to figure it out, right? Now, again, that may not be 100% true in that there may be some money that I don't know about. There may be something that is out there that if we dug a little deeper, or maybe Ryan and I didn't get to that. But for the most part, it's up to him to make partnerships and figure it out. Okay, so I really believe that there's an opportunity for us to take the IMB and Mercy and all those tools, and you can imagine if we did a 2 or 3 day digital missions conference, imagine what would happen. All these pastors I met a bunch of pastors from Ireland. I mean, really cool. One of them surfed. He was a surfer. It was amazing. I met some really cool guys over there that are in desperate need of help because their congregations are 15, 20, 30 people. So they'll take anything. But digital missions is a place where everybody is going that way. Everything's already there in the digital age. So if we had a digital missions conference, or even if we had a leadership development conference over things like BKC and how to do that in the neighborhoods, I think we could help. A lot of you that have helped BKC over the years, you could help that student ministry. Many of you that literally how to teach a student Bible study. We could do volunteer training in ways that would be a huge help to them. And then bring Mercy to have their booths and expose their ministry to them. Let's go to the next one. So how do we work with the IMB? I think there's several ways to take ClearView's tools and plant it into that. The first thing I would say would be to align with the Lindsays. The Lindsays have a few partnership churches, but I don't know that they have, if I can tell it right, they have some churches that have come alongside them with prayer support. I asked him if any church had come alongside him with financial support. I don't know. If I heard him correctly, he said no. So by IMB standards, ClearView cannot write a check and put it in the bank account of the Lindsays, okay? Because the IMB does that, right? But what we can do is give them a ministry budget where they can do things like a soccer tournament or any type of neighborhood party or a concert or anything like that. So we could take, $10,000 would revolutionize what they're able to do at this point, right? So I believe the biggest part of that is, in fact, I'll tell you a quick story about Ryan. About 2 conversations in, I get a long email from him one day, and he said, he just made a statement, and he said, Jason, I just want you to know, I don't know you that well, and I don't know your church that well, but you just don't know what it's done for me and Tara to know that a church is thinking about us, because it's lonely work. And I would say that's probably true if you're in Brazil or anywhere, no matter where you are. It's just lonely work. So it really did touch his heart that he actually said that the UK's on your mind, whether you do anything work with us at all. Just the fact that you think about us, it doesn't happen a lot. We don't see this a lot. And so it's really been, I think, a boost to him and Tara. I believe there's a definite possibility that ClearView could start a church over there. I know that sounds like a big undertaking, and it would be, but we could come alongside Ryan and his partnerships, and I'm going to show you how I think that could happen. I just mentioned leadership coaching and ways we could help volunteer leaders over there. Sports evangelism, oh my gosh. I think that would be from soccer to rugby to everything from tennis. I know all y'all go, oh, we got tons of rugby players, But there's all kinds of ways for us to help on that front, and I'll show you how I think so in a minute. And then a digital conference. I really believe when you look at people like Brandon Howard over here and James Browning and Dylan Sherlock and my experience in content marketing, and there's a couple other people in our church that have, and there's another one that owns a media company. I believe we could go to York and put together a digital conference, and I think we would have scores of pastors show up for that. Because you imagine all of a sudden we're helping them reach little remote parts of Scotland and Ireland and remote parts of the UK in their zip codes and doing that through the digital process. I think we could really, from a gospel standpoint, we absolutely could do some major work right there. So go to the next one. I want to tell you about I told you about that map that Ryan had in his office. We went and prayer walked an area called Oakwood. So think of Oakwood. If Leeds were Nashville, by my estimation, Oakwood would kind of be North Antioch. All right. So let's go to the next frame. That's a great aerial shot. I got in a helicopter and I went up there and I took I'm just kidding. I totally did not do that. But that's a great aerial shot of Fernvale or leisure park. They call them leisure parks. So think Pinkerton. All right, if you live in Franklin, think Pinkerton. Or think, what's that one up here on Granny White? Crockett. Yeah, think of a big place like that. There's several of them. That's what that is. Now, let me tell you why that matters. Look off in the distance. See all those homes? They have no yard. So they all come right there on the weekends, right? Now, look around. See those goalposts? That's not American football. That's rugby, okay? look right there on the central far left. That's a bicycle track where like BMX. It looks like that. I think that's what it is. It's got whoop-de-doos and all kinds of things. I looked at that pretty close. It looks to me like it's a competition bike track. Go to the upper left corner. Those are tennis courts in the back. That's a clay field, kind of center upward. That's like a clay, and it looks to me like it's a clay soccer field. Or it could be that it's a soccer field that they just haven't replanted in grass yet. But that's what it is, soccer field. That big green space right in the middle is just a big common area. Now look on the right. In the top right corner, that's a soccer field and a rugby pitch. They call it being on the pitch. He's on the field. So in that top right corner, Ryan and I were just prayer walking this community. And so we were out there on the center of that top right corner, and we were just talking. And as I was talking to him, I said, Ryan, this is what's interesting to me. Everywhere I go, and especially in the United States, I hear pastors here in the U.S., pastors like me, I hear missionaries like you, and they all talk about how hard it is, and how there's nothing happening, and how it's so barren and desolate. But I said, you know what? People aren't greater sinners today than they were in Spurgeon's era. They aren't greater sinners today than they were in the day of Whitefield. John Wesley, people aren't more depraved now than they were then. And I said, every great awakening has to start somewhere small. Every great awakening started somewhere small. Why can it not start here? Why should it not be at Oakwood? Because this is that area, remember that big corridor that I told you there was nothing there? I said, look around, that's hundreds of thousands of people right there within 15 minutes of walking to that park. I'm like, man, I said, Ryan, I don't know. I'm not trying to influence your future. But I said, if you don't have much of a ministry budget, let me tell you what I see. I see a whole bunch of free stuff. I see free fields, and that brick building in the top center above the dirt field, that's where the swimming pool is. It's like a community center. They have swim clubs and all that. I said, you got all this stuff like free tools, man. And I said, there's got to be a way that we could come alongside you guys and figure this out. It poses some very real challenges when it comes to planting a church. But I can tell you of all the experience, and I don't know, I haven't finished praying about this yet, but of all the experiences that I had over there, the place where my heart was stirred the most was standing in that soccer field. And I don't know what that means yet, but that I can just tell you that, and maybe it's the American in me, because I understand the power of sports and the power of community centers, especially when you don't have a front yard, right? And so I could see us doing a lot of work right there in a church plant. That's just but that's very, very, very hard work. Very, 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 very hard work. And it takes a long time. And I should have said this at the very beginning. I do want you guys to know, anything we do in the UK, it's going to be for a while. We can't just go over there in a year and back out. I mean, it's not. And I also would say this to you when it comes to the UK. One of the reasons that Americans love places like Guatemala and Uganda and orphanages in Moldova and Haiti and places in the uttermost parts of Brazil and Rio de Janeiro and places like that is because an American can go over there, they can put their hands on an orphan, and they can know they touched something, they did something, and it matters, man. I mean, hey, I'll be the first person to tell you, like, it'll mess with you when you go in places like that. That's not going to be the UK. It just doesn't work like that. This would be families. It would be people that don't ever think about Jesus. It would be a very non-Christian environment, and it's very dry. I mean, literally, one of the missionaries told me, Jason, you need to understand, if you bring up something like a biblical reference, they literally have no clue what you're talking about. You bring up Daniel in the lion's den. Is that a movie? I mean, they literally know nothing. So you can imagine that's slow work, right? Slow work. Let me tell you kind of what's going forward. And this is my last image. So what's next? What does next look like for ClearView? Well, I think in 2019, this year, Ryan Lindsay and I have been in contact. I believe in September or October, we can take a leadership trip over there, okay? Now, all this is going to be on the internet, so you don't have to try to remember all this. But so let me tell you if you're interested in going to the UK, this isn't going to be a sightseeing trip. We won't make it to London, I promise. We won't make it down there. And I'm not saying that to be snarky. I mean, really, it's going to be go see Leeds, go see York, see some sights along the way, do a lot of prayer walking and a lot of strategic meetings. We're going to meet with the IMB missionary. We would meet with more people at Mercy UK. So if this is on your heart, and anything that I just mentioned to you about things like digital missions, things like BKC, student ministry, sports evangelism, renovation, repair, leadership development, things like that, working with girls that are disenfranchised and abused on some kind of level, that sort of thing. If any of that made sense to you, then you're welcome to go with me in September or October. Cost, I really don't know. I would say you're probably looking at somewhere in the ballpark of $2,000. And the bulk of that's going to be your plane ticket. But we would probably go to York and stay just because it's easier to eat in the evenings in York. I could be at 50 restaurants in 7 minutes on foot when I was in York. And and you get to look at a castle. I mean, it's really cool, that part is cool. But by the way, any entrepreneurs in here, I'm not talking about Jesus stuff. If you want to start a coffee shop that opens before 9:30 in the morning, you'll be a millionaire by tomorrow, okay? Their coffee shops don't open till like 9. I'm like, brother, we are almost to lunch by then, and I'm starving over here. Like, I'm 3 cups in by 9 o'clock. I'm not kidding. And it drove me crazy. I'm like, next time I'm bringing my French press. I'm not joking. I'm bringing my French press and I'm making my coffee. It drove me crazy over there for that. So that's the next step. Now, all of this could change. So please don't. I'm doing my dead level best to tell you what next might look like, okay? I believe in January there's a possibility. It's all going to depend on what Ariana and Debbie and Rob and them say. There is a loose possibility we could do our first renovation trip if you're somewhat wanting to help those people at the Oxen Hope. By the way, that's a really cool drive. Like, you leave Leeds, you go out in the country, past all the sheep, then you go out in like these cobblestone roads. It's everything you'd think it would be. Then whammo, there's the Oxen Hope home and the campus, and it's awesome. So we'd be there in May. I really believe we could. I put in a call to Dave Sylvester, Calvary Chapel, York. So Grace Chapel in Leapers Fork? Okay, that's a denomination unto itself, really. And they have Calvary Chapel, York, has about 150 people on Sunday morning, which is a huge church. And I'm going to ask Dave about the possibility of us hosting that at his church, if he'd be willing. I haven't asked Dave that yet, so I tried to call him, but he's actually in the States right now. He's a wonderful man. Oh, gosh. He and I, we spent a lot of time together. I didn't expect that, but we ended up spending quite a bit of time together. And we walked through York, and we both discovered that we both walk really slow, and we love that about each other. And so he's a cool guy. He lived in Hendersonville for like 3 years trying to get a record deal, like in the 70s. It's pretty cool. But I think that's a very real possibility. May, June, we could start our university student exchange. That absolutely I know we could do. And then I just put the summer. There might be 10 things right there. A lot of that's going to depend on Ryan Lindsay. And and his leadership, because he lives there and he knows what we're working with and what we're up against. So those are just some things as we go in September, October to meet with Ryan some more. We can, when I say BKC pilot, one of the ideas that Pastor John Gardner had, which I thought was that's an awesome idea, is if we went and trained a church or several churches on how to do a BKC for a couple of days and then go do one in the community and let them mirror and see us do it and how missions works with families and husbands and wives and that kind of stuff. That's a possibility. I don't know if we could do that, a possible church plant. So all of these things are just some tools that I'm giving you a loose timeline. I don't, if we take a deep dive in Yorkshire, I don't see us coming back from that for years. I think we owe it to them to really go along and help and come alongside with the Lindsays especially. And I would love to see us put the Lindsays in our missions budget and how we can help. But if we do a possible church plant over there, I mean, we could invest a pretty hefty amount of money in helping them get that thing up and running, man. And how cool would that be? For me personally, that might be the hardest thing we've ever done in our lives. It's very non-Christian, but I don't know. There's just something about thinking about we can send a steady stream of ClearView people over there to help start a gospel work in a community like the Antioch area of Nashville, as far as geographically speaking, to where we just plant a deep root and go wide. I don't know. That's just kind of interesting to me. But okay. So that's it. I hardly took a breath, but I wanted you. I kind of wanted to give you everything that I could give you about that.